Hey, welcome to another Agency Bellcast. As usual, we're here with Laura Souter, CEO, founder, and designer extraordinaire of Agency Bell. This week, we're going to talk about tariffs, but not about tariffs themselves. We're not that kind of business show. We're going to talk about how branding and marketing are being impacted by the uncertainty tariffs are causing and how businesses, especially consultants and small firms, are responding to the ripple effects and the breakneck pace of these economic changes. We're going to talk a little bit more about how budgets are shifting, how legislation might help marketing and branding, and how small businesses can keep up without burning out. So, hi, Laura.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you this week?
I'm great. This has been a wonderful week.
All right, let's jump into it. So, the first question I have for you is about the UK. I don't know if you read, but the UK advertisers in general have been cutting budgets among all of this economic uncertainty. And I wonder if this is a harbinger of what's going to happen in the US. For the first time in years, the UK marketing budgets have been reportedly shrunk, and they think this is reflecting the growing global unease, particularly in reaction to US tariffs. So the report isn't all gloom and doom. They say some sectors are maintaining or increasing spend, especially digital. But how should small businesses adapt to their marketing budgets with all of this economic uncertainty?
Truthfully, cautiously. I mean, obviously, I'm on the receiving end of some of those funds, but I think that this is a precarious couple of years that we still have to ride, unfortunately. I'm personally very cautious about my own personal business and home budget these days, and I think there's really some unknowns out there, unfortunately. I think that some of the money that businesses are spending, I heard an example of one direct to consumer company really going gangbusters on some Facebook advertising spends, and it just seemed really uncalled for right now. I mean, I think this is a time to be really cautious and truly strategic, and not just throw money at the wall.
So is this a good time to refocus on brand and positioning?
I think it's really important. I think that there are businesses that will go out of business, unfortunately, and it is a time to really know yourself as a business and know exactly who you're connecting with, and that will make those dollars that you do spend even more beneficial. Because again, if you are doing any type of targeted advertising, Facebook advertising, even physical advertising, you're going to really want to be clear about who it is that you want to connect with. And the wide nets that used to be created years ago, just really, it's just not in the cards right now.
Do you have any guidelines about where small businesses, service providers should cut and where they should double down?
I think I can't really answer that across the board. I mean, small businesses, I mean, what are we talking about? Are we talking about, an auto dealership actually isn't such a small business these days. A dry cleaner? Are we talking about a executive coach? What type of small business, help me identify a small business, and I can be a little more savvy about how I answer that.
So it's really on a case by case basis.
I think so. Absolutely. I mean, I have quite a few clients across the board, and we analyze this, business by business.
All right. So our second question is about print advertising, and New York State is looking for ways to shore up local news through a proposal called the Local Act. It would give small businesses up to an 80% tax credit for advertising in local newspapers. And I'm sure this is in response to the gradual decline of local newscasting, news reporting, uh, due to platforms like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, Twitter. Even TikTok is impacting news. One stat says a third of US adults get their news regularly from TikTok. So this is a way to try to shore up a dying business, or is this a way to help accelerate a business that is of value to, your types of clients? So is print advertising, newspaper advertising still worth it?
So I do quite a bit of print advertising, but in magazines that are targeted towards the niche that my clients serve. So, as an example, a luxury home interiors magazine. Those are really vital sources of advertising for my clients. My clients don't advertise in the local newspapers. Back in the early 2000s, yes, salons, spas, etc. I mean, that was really a go-to. I personally don't read print newspapers. I subscribe to some online publications. I love the concept of kicking back with a cup of coffee and reading the newspaper. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's sweet. When I had younger kids, that their picture could be in the local newspaper and the local sports teams, and I just don't necessarily see it as something that's going to really move the economy forward. And I think that folks are getting their local news through targeted Facebook groups these days. It's an unfortunate, dying breed. Yes, I can't believe, as a former designer of magazines, that I am actually going to say that some forms of print may be dying. I like the concept of the government stepping in and trying to incentivize and support, but I just don't see it really taking off, truthfully.
And it's not a big value to your clients anyway, because it's not where you advertise their
Well,
services
my clients don't do that. They're in glossy, high end targeted luxury magazines. Yes,
that are really targeted at their category.
exactly. Yeah. And back, even just somewhat recently, when I had to post a notice in a local newspaper, it was so expensive. I would not advise my client to advertise in that fashion.
Well, let's switch on the complete opposite side, going from print to Threads. Now, Threads is Meta's X or Twitter competitor. And up until now, they've only had very limited advertising services, and they've recently opened it up globally. So Threads has about 320 million monthly users. And have you seen Threads as viable marketing channel for your clients, or is it still X taking the majority of your focus?
No, I don't really see my clients doing anything on X or on Threads. I feel like Threads is still a novel platform where people are still trying to figure it out. People are trying to find their voices on it. I always had a Twitter feed back in the day. I had a personal one, I had a business one. I loved having that outlet just to share newsy items that were relevant for my platform, and I had a feed on my website. I liked that. I want to get into that comfort zone with Threads, but I don't feel like I have that yet personally or business wise, and my
Mhm.
clients don't either. I haven't seen any liftoff from my clients.
Yeah, the I've had some of the same thoughts. The one thing about Threads slash X slash Blue Sky is the ability to be found, whereas Instagram or Facebook, you're really, posting, or in LinkedIn, of course, you're posting to your network or your network's network. And the opportunity with these, short form platforms is the opportunity for discoverability and somebody who's completely disconnected finding your content.
I loved that back in the day, and I want to rediscover that with these newer platforms. I won't touch X with a 10-foot pole personally. Um,
hmm
I don't even have I've disbanded my profiles there, to be honest.
And do you think that's aligned with a lot of your clients?
I do actually. I think people are still trying to find their way, and the the folks of my generation, that most of my clients are in my generation ish. They're still trying to find the relevance in either a Blue Sky or a Threads, and trying to find which one do they want to focus on. I think it's nice, to have an understanding of both, but um, I don't really see focusing full throttle on each of them. I don't see that. I would say pick a lane.
Pick a lane and focus on that.
Yeah.
Do any of the platform management technologies make this easier or more difficult?
I don't see. No. I mean, I always just go to the source. What else you got for me?
Well, our last question for today is about lead generation. All of our discussion so far really is at the service of bringing in new clients. And what I'm hearing from my clients is that they're looking to reduce or at least delay a lot of their marketing budgets. And they're trying to be more cost efficient. Maybe they're not spending less, but they're certainly asking questions. I want to talk for a little bit about lead generation with you and what you're seeing as being most effective currently, like right now in this economy with lead generation tools and techniques.
Okay. So again, it really depends on the client. So I still do some email marketing, and I do some direct mail, interestingly. So for a landscape architecture firm, sending really beautiful 6x9 glossy postcards to the higher income zip codes in their area is a very effective tool, and has a huge ROI. Email marketing, you can't just say one generic message and send it to 3,000 of your database members. You need to subset that message to a smaller group. Even if it's all about your services, you want to really be able to speak to Bob, Mary, Jane, and Fred, let's say, about their particular needs within the niche
Mhm.
that you offer. So, a little while ago, I was approached for supporting a technology company in Texas with their email marketing problem. And I said, let's see an example of what you're sending out. He gave me an example, and he sent that exact message to all, whatever, 3,000 of his database members.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I'd like to know a little bit more about, how can we subdivide this? And he's like, no, I just need you to fix my email marketing problem. I said, I'm going to do that. Let's talk about how you're messaging and connecting with those folks. I'm going to digest this message in a very different way than someone else with a little bit of other tweaked version of a different set of problems is going to understand it. They're going to sniff you out as sending a generic message right away, and boom, it goes into the trash bin. So that's why these things aren't landing. You gotta really know your market. So I don't know if I'm answering all your questions about lead generation, but I think that really curating your message to a series of individuals, really identify them, name your target market, have a persona, have a face, really get to know them. And once you start talking to them, let's just say I'm talking to you, Mark. I'm going to talk to you very differently than I'm going to talk to my daughter. You both might need, quote unquote, coaching services, but one is going to listen differently than the other.
So what I'm hearing is that, there's a lot of buzz out there around XYZ service or technique works for all businesses, let's say small businesses or medium-sized businesses. But what in reality, each business needs its own strategy.
I would say so.
And and you're going to use some of the same tools, some of the tools we just talked about, but in different ratios and with a very different understanding of who their customers are. So this one size fits all, advertising that we often receive from the Metas and from the Googles of the world, in reality, just don't work. I mean, they work, but they're ineffective.
I think they're ineffective, truthfully. I mean, this has been my experience with my set of clients. I'm just one agency, but I think that I don't know. I'm 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 not even sold with the concept of small, medium, and large business. I mean, that alone is a very complicated framework. I mean, are we talking about revenue? Are we talking about size of company in terms of employees? I mean, I hear small business, very differently depending on who I'm talking to. Some folks call themselves a small business and they're a $10 million company. That is a small business in the realm of what large businesses are, but I've also worked with solopreneurs who are looking to get to $500,000. That to them would be a heroic effort. Um, we have clients that are 1.5 million that want to go to five. That's still a small business, even though to a individual coach, that might be considered a really large business. So I think this one size fit all definitely doesn't work. I mean, industry, size, number of employees, amount of reach. I spoke to a high-end home builder yesterday. He's one of 5 employees looking to really be the go-to in a particular series of suburbs around Boston. That is a great goal. That's a small business too, even though we're talking millions of dollars in his realm.
Mhm, mhm.
But his problem is going to be solved very differently than another business.
Great. Well, this is great. Thank you very much, Lori. This was a great podcast this week. As always, I want to thank our evergreen sponsor, Agency Bell, Laura Souter, for being the star of the show.
All
Thanks. We'll see you next week. Bye.
right. Now.